Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Chris Coons joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir.
Always good to be on with you, Greta. Thanks for making time for me.
Yeah. Senator, I have a two-part question. And the first part of the question is, are you 100% opposed to Iran getting a nuclear weapon? That's the first part. And secondly,
yes,
what would you do? What would you do if you were president?
So first, I would not have launched a war against Iran without having informed and brought in our critical allies, both in the Middle East and in Western Europe. Second, I mean, look back at what George W. Bush did. Hearing after hearing, conversations with allies, build a joint force. In the first Gulf War under George H.W. Bush and the second Gulf War under George W. Bush. President Trump launched into this war without that preparation, getting the American people informed and on his side and clear about what the goals and ends of this war are, and then getting our allies. Look, maybe it's because I'm a small guy. I think if you're going into a fight, you want as many friends alongside you as you can possibly have. And we don't have that right now. That's a weakness. I think that he ought to be connecting with, communicating with our core allies to help them join us in putting pressure on Iran. Instead, he's been berating them, accusing them, further distancing them from the United States.
Well, so one way to look at it is that people are the world could have joined us, but they sort of had hurt feelings. Once it happened, there was nothing to stop them from joining in, because this has been going on since, I think, February 28th. That's the first thing. As for Congress, you know, I recognize what the Congress says, you know, what the Constitution says, but, you know, there is not, I mean, I'm not quite sure what Congress would have been able to do for or against or add to it, other than that we would perhaps meet some constitutional duties of having a discussion about it. But I don't know, you know, to what end any of this would have had.
Well, it's hard to say. I know what the Constitution says, but it's the Constitution. And in the first and second Gulf Wars, Congress passed an authorization for the use of military force against Iraq. So I do think President Trump could have come and made the case and said, diplomacy only accomplished this much. Here's what's left. And look at where we are today. Iran still has hundreds of pounds of highly enriched uranium, and they've closed the Strait of Hormuz. We're in a worse place today than we were February 22nd when the war began, and with fewer resources. We've allowed Iran to get a greater strategic asset. So previously, we were all concerned that they might race towards a nuclear weapon and then have that leverage. Today, cheaper, easier, harder to detect, harder to stop. They've demonstrated the capacity to close the Strait of Hormuz and jack up our gas prices above $4 a gallon.
All right, let me go to the authorization use of force. That isn't a constitutional requirement. The constitutional requirement is declaration of war. We last did it against Romania, I think, in the 40s. We didn't do it for Korea. We didn't do it for Vietnam. We didn't do it for anything. So the authorization of force is no constitutional requirement. The declaration of war
is a vote on the record by Congress authorizing force.
I don't think that's in the...
So the public knows where we stand, and they know what we've done.
I think with today's media, everyone pretty much knows what we're doing, and maybe they may not like, certain people may not like it. So I got that part. Here's another thing that I have a concern about. Is that I'm all for diplomacy if it works. As I understand it, is that Witkoff offered, on behalf of the United States, to Iran. It says it doesn't want a nuclear weapon. It says that it wants it for power and for medical. We offered to give them enriched uranium up to 60% free, but they rejected that offer. And to me, that seemed like diplomacy wasn't really in their wheelhouse at that point.
Well, that's not something I've had confirmed to me. I also read press reports that he offered $20 billion. So, yes, it's good to be at the table. It's good to engage in negotiations, but it's also good to have some leverage over your opponent. And I earlier today questioned Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, about the decision to waive sanctions on Russian oil and Iranian oil, which is helping provide more funding for Putin's war machine, for Russia's efforts to share intelligence with Iran to target American troops, to help Iran with their drone attacks on us and our allies, and has given Iran billions of dollars. So I think we should have kept sanctions in place. I understand the Secretary's answer that the president was trying to keep the price of gas and oil from going up further. But frankly, if the president's prepared to put Americans' warfighters in harm's way, he ought to be willing to look at the American people and say, we need to take out this military capability of the Iranian regime, the potential of enriching uranium. So we're going to put more pressure on them by really applying these sanctions. We're not going to give them billions more on the world oil markets.
Well, forgive me for taking the last word on this, but by waiving the sanctions on Russia on the oil, the irony of it is that Russia is the gas station to Western Europe, the people that that need it. Yep. So I mean, it's all. I mean, it's all so crazy. Of how we do this. Anyway, Senator Chris Coons, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.